Colin.
Hi.
Colin, when were you born?
1970, July 1970. I was born in King George V Hospital on Missenden Road in Newtown. We lived in, I think we lived in Thomas Street. It's the very first house that when I went home from the hospital. It's Thomas Street. I have no memory of it at all. I think we moved out of there into Smithers Street in Chippendale, maybe a year after I was born, I think. My only memory of that house is moving out of there when I was about 4. I remember being outside and people loading things onto a big flatbed truck, and a large stuffed Pink Panther toy, sort of must have been about 6 foot high. I don't know, very small, so it probably wasn't, but memory of it is about 6 foot high. And I remember burning myself being burnt on the back of the legs, sitting on the seat in front of the truck. We moved from there again into Calder Road, where we stayed for quite a number of years. Calder Road's again in Chippendale, off Ivy Street, just in behind the university, Seymour Centre. It was quite a nice street, fairly quiet. A lot of families living sort of in the street and around the corner down in Ivy Street. Very much a little community. We lived next door to the butchers, and across the road there was the grocers, and just further up the street on Abercrombie Street there were takeaway stores and the fruit and veg shop and the news agency and things like that. I believe that the family who ran the fruit and veg shop is still the same family that's running it there now. This is, I don't know, 10, 12 years later.
When did you move to Erskineville?
We moved to Erskineville. We moved to Erskineville when I was about 12, I think. We moved to Amy Street in Erskineville. And we were only there for a little while. My grandmother lived just around the corner from us, and she got sick, cancer, not long after we moved over there, so we moved in with her to look after her. And my parents are still living there now, in that same house. Going blank.
Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, my father was married twice, so I've got sort of 5 older sisters and an older brother and a younger brother from my mother. But they didn't all live. We didn't all live together. My older sisters are much older. They're in their sort of mid to late 30s now, and they have their own families. So when I was growing up, I think the youngest of that lot, my sister Denise, she lived with us for a few years before she moved out and sort of got her own family and things. I think she was with us. She lived with us for about 4 years. When she was about 16, because my dad's first marriage, that was such a large family, and they lived in a small country town. Both my parents were originally from Yass. There wasn't a lot of work and things, so some of the kids were fostered out, and my sister Denise was actually in a home for a little while. And after that, she came to live with us. That's when we lived in Chippendale, in Calder Road. And that living in Calder Road was great. There, I almost kind of regret it's having to move over to Erskineville, because we left a lot of friends and people we liked behind. Calder Road was a fun place to live. The council would come down during school holidays and block off a section of the street with very large pine sort of blockades. They'd block off sort of most of the block of the street so that we could play out there because a lot of kids lived in the area. So that was good.
That's pretty decent of the council.
Yeah. I mean, at the time we sort of didn't really think much of it, but looking back, yeah, it is very, very, very good of the council. I don't think they do it anymore. I think a lot of those sort of families have moved away, and now there are a lot more uni students living in the houses that are down there and things.
What sort of kid were you?
What sort of kid was I? I was a fairly sort of quiet kid. I kept a lot to myself. Mum and Dad say that they'd often sort of come in and find me in the lounge room with my nose in a book while everybody else was outside playing and things. So I kept a lot to myself. But with the sort of the local kids, and my cousin, my cousin who, she's just about 6 months older than me. She lived with us, when she was 6 months until she was about 10. So we'd go and hang out with the local kids and go and play sort of in the university grounds, which was living in sort of inner city Chippendale. There's not a lot of park area and things like that. So the university was like this huge playground for us. It was wonderful. It was just great to go in there and have adventures and play pirates and things like that.
You must have had a lot of adventures in the university grounds.
Yeah, it was great. And they've done a lot of redevelopment in there now. We spent a lot of time in the area that's sort of around the back of the Seymour Centre and over towards, I think, what's the engineering department. And they used to have native rosemary shrubs everywhere, and so we'd go into those and it'd be like travelling around in like an old English hedge maze, and sort of you'd push through a bit and it'd just be empty inside, sort of one, like the shrubs had grown up and formed a room. So we had sort of like little cubby houses here and there, and we sort of used to spend a lot of time just sort of playing up in amongst around the Seymour Centre. They used to set up these large metallic sculptures out the front of the Seymour Centre, and they were just great to climb on. Being sort of 10-year-old kid, these huge sculptures were great to play with and climb on, and it was a lot of fun to sort of watch people sort of travelling in and out the back of the Seymour Centre, going to rehearsals, and the musicians and things. There's one part at the back of the Seymour Centre where you can sort of go in and look into one of the rehearsal rooms where the musicians go in to rehearse, and sometimes there'd be 40 people in there, just a variety of instruments, and they're all rehearsing. It was fantastic. It was great to watch. We also spent a lot of our time up at Victoria Park swimming pool. So it was very close to where we were. So we'd come home from school every afternoon during summer and be straight up to the pool and be up there until it closed.
How did the university staff treat you? Were you welcomed, or were you intruders, or little rat bags?
They seemed to let us they seemed to just let us have our way with the place. We sort of tended not to be destructive or anything like that, because we thought, well, this is about the only place that there's grass and places to play besides Victoria Park. And so we respected the campus and things, and occasionally we'd have security guards just coming up and checking what we were doing and where we were, but they'd generally let us stay and play, so that was good.
Yeah, were you able to sneak in to see any productions?
No, we were never that game. We liked sort of watching them rehearse and watching people come and go, and sort of through one section of the stage door you can see where they set up the flats and the sets for the productions they have inside, and it's just as a kid it was amazing to watch and see these huge sets sort of rolling past the door and wondering what was going on in there, and it was an exciting time. It was quite fun.
Were you ever able to go to any shows?
No. We sort of didn't really have a lot of money, my interest in theatre didn't really start until I was at high school. so it was just another world to me. It just sort of a world that I don't think I could have grasped or been a part of at that age. But looking back, I would have liked to have gone and seen some productions there. But my family still aren't. My parents aren't into theatre, and they never have been. They're sort of working class background. They've always sort of struggled and struggled. So yeah, but they tend to have their downtime as being at home after work and having dinner and just relaxing around in the lounge room watching TV, and that's their downtime.
When you if you're talking about your family, would you were they very sort of practical? What did your father do for a job?
My father works. He has worked for the last 25 years. Yeah, 25 years with Sydney County Council Electricity. He cleans electrical substations, those sort of green boxes you see everywhere with the transformers and things inside them. It's his job to go in and make sure they're not too dusty and ready to explode and things like that, and he's been doing that for the last 25 years. I don't know whether he enjoys it or not, but he does it. My father's the type of man that thinks, is of the opinion that you get a job and you stay with it. And yeah.
And what about your mum?
Mum, she's been working up at the hospitals on Missenden Road the last 8-9 years as a food service lady, one of the yellow ladies that go around and give the patients their dinner and lunch and things. But when we were growing up in Chippendale, she was a barmaid. She worked in a couple of the local pubs, Chippendale. She worked in the Britannia, which is on Cleveland Street, for a while.
She must have come home with some interesting stories.
Yeah. Well, at the time, we wouldn't. Dad starts work at I think 7 in the morning and gets home about 4, so we wouldn't see Dad in the morning. But Mum would be there, and then when we got home from school in the afternoon, Dad would be home, but Mum would be out at work, so they weren't always around at the same time. I remember at one stage for a couple of years, we sort of hardly saw Mum at all. We'd see her in the morning, but when we'd come home, she'd be working at one pub, and then have to go off and work at another one sort of straight after that over in Enmore for a few hours, and so she'd get home after we'd gone to bed. Yeah.
Sounds like it must have been pretty tough, really.
Well, in some ways it was. I mean, in other ways, it sort of, instilled responsibility in me, and helping out, getting dinner ready and making sure that, my younger brother was, bathed and had his pajamas on at the right time and things like that. It tends to instill a sense of responsibility in one. And I think that was a good thing, but I also think that I missed out on a lot of sort of just being a kid a lot.
Why did your mum need, if your father was in work, as it was the wages that in that time, were they so low, like a working person's wage, that you couldn't really live, so you had one brother, so it's a family of 4.
Well, no, at the time, my cousin was living with us until we were about 10. And my older sister Denise lived with us, so there were 6 of us at one stage for quite a few years. And I think Dad's wage wasn't that great, so Mum had to take on the 2 jobs to even things out. Yeah.
It must have made them really tired.
Yeah, tired and irritable. Yeah.
They can understand it.
Yeah.
Were they warm towards you?
Yeah. As much as people who are working that much can be towards their kids. They weren't excessively sort of cold or cruel or anything like that, or distant. There was I suppose, the right amount of love and things that you sort of want and expect from a parent.
Would your situation there have been like sort of a similar situation to other friends that you had?
In some cases, yeah. A lot of the families that lived around us, one family a couple of doors up was just single parent family, mother and 3 kids. The people who lived next door to us ended up getting divorced, and so it was the mother and again 3 kids. And yeah, so around, a lot of them were just sort of lower working class type families.
Because there wasn't a lot of money around the neighbourhood.
No, not at all.
And the kids would be in the neighbourhood would be aware of. I suppose what I'm getting is like these days there's a lot of status sort of crap going on with kids who only wear Gucci shoes or whatever, stushy.
Yeah. No, there wasn't any of that. Because we were such a close community and everybody knew one another really, really well. The people who lived in the street, rather than calling them, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so or what, they were like, Uncle Frank and Auntie Betty and people like that. That's how we referred to them, because it was such a close-knit community. Mum and Dad still have contact with quite a lot of those people and hear from them, at least a number of, quite a few times a year, in constant contact. So yeah, they not necessarily see them a lot, but hear from them and call one another or send Christmas cards and birthday cards and things like that. Excuse me.
Were your parents politically active? Like, if they was politics talked about in the house?
No, not really. More so with my mother's sister and her husband. He was at one stage the deputy mayor of South Sydney, and
what was his name?
Keith Challenger. Quite a few years ago. And he was an alderman and things, so politics came up there, and sort of, at the time I was too young to understand what they were talking about, but Mum and Dad themselves have never really been into politics.
Was there a view that politics was something that you shouldn't talk about, that polite people did not discuss politics?
Well, I suppose in the view that, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, it's always going to end up with an argument, that sort of thing, no one's going to agree on either issues, no matter what point of view it is, so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what about religion?
My mother's always been of the opinion that if we wanted to follow a religion, then she'd wait until we're old enough to choose our own, rather than inflict one upon us. It's not the right word, I suppose. Well, a lot of families will, christen their children and put them into, the Catholic religion or whatever they are from a very early age and not give them that choice. My mother was of the belief that if I wanted to follow a religion, it's my choice to do so. My father, he doesn't really talk about sort of religion. He's not, he doesn't go to church or, doesn't sort of, what he doesn't like is, Jesus Christ and things like that. You're not allowed to say things like that in front of him. He terms that as swearing. So, but I don't know where that came from. I think maybe his mother, my grandmother, I think she may have been religious in some ways, and sort of went to church and believed sort of heavily in God. Again, though, with my uncle and aunt, my mother's older sister, they were Roman Catholics. Church of England, and I went to church with them a few times, but I sort of have no real belief, and no real faith in the church actually. So I tended not to go with them very much. But no, Mum and Dad sort of, particularly Mum was more, if you want one, then wait until you're old enough and choose one for yourself.
In terms of, you mentioned that your father objected to blaspheming, I suppose. were there sort of rules of behaviour, or I mean, what about other swear words like the big F or something?
No. I still don't even mention that word in front of my parents. It's my mum particularly swears like a trooper, but
But what would happen if you? But you couldn't?
well, yeah. If I did, I'd be in trouble. It was a case of do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. And so that's just, I think, been ingrained in me. So I even now I don't, even bloody, I don't say bloody in front of them, occasionally, but not much. I don't know whether that's, I think it's just because it was so ingrained when we were younger that, she didn't want to hear us swearing, and if she ever did hear us swearing, it was a big deal. We were in trouble.
Well, when you talking about behaviours, well, what would happen if you did do something that you weren't supposed to do?
We'd get smacked and sent to our room. Yeah.
And what were the sort of what were some of the rules or things that were expected of you?
Well, we were expected to be home straight after school, and if we wanted to sort of go anywhere or do anything after school, then we definitely had to let them know where we were going, what we were doing. My older sister Denise, who lived with us for a while, she had a bit of a wild streak for a while, and hung out with a group of sort of rough-looking teenagers, and so Mum cracked down a bit after Denise moved out, and so myself and my younger brother weren't allowed out that much, and we sort of, she'd not so much watch what we did, but sort of keep a fairly close eye on us. I think thinking so that we wouldn't get into sort of similar trouble, same way my older sister did. Sort of, not that she was ever in trouble with the law or anything. She'd just be out late, and I think she was drinking and things like that. Teenagers do. Yeah, and so I think Mum didn't want that to happen necessarily again with myself and my younger brother. I mean, they were fairly, lax about things. They're not lax, but they weren't sort of a set guideline of things. We had to let them know where we were going and what we were doing. Not that we sort of went far or did much. It'd be going to the pool or going to play up at the university or down at Pine Street Recreation Centre. We'd go down there a fair bit, which was good. They had table tennis and snooker, and they had a crafts room upstairs where you could do clay work and model building and things like that. So we could go and do things down there, but we weren't sort of really allowed out of the sort of local area.
And would that be the same for most kids in the neighbourhood at that time?
Yeah, it was.
And who are your friends is it in Chippendale? Yeah.
Yep. Who were they?
Yeah.
Well, we had next door to us was the Payne family, Betty and Frank Payne, and they had 2 girls and 2 boys, Carolyn and Kathy, and Stephen and Jeff. I think the older boy, Stephen, actually died a couple of years ago in a car accident. But they moved out of the area before we did. Betty and Frank, I think they had divorced and they moved on. And there were another family next to them, and for the life of me I could never remember their name. It just goes... Mary, I think the mother's name was, but beyond that I can't remember.
And what was the racial mix in the area?
Mainly sort of Anglo. There were a Greek family that lived around the corner down Ivy Street a bit, the Martinelli family. I think they actually still live there. So they were Greek, and I think across the road from them, I think they might have been Yugoslavian, Croatian, something like that. I'm not exactly sure. But majority were Anglo-Saxon people.
And were immigrant people, and were people accepted, or was there racism, or was it?
No. People were accepted. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, with the Greek family down the road, being kids, we'd sort of make fun of them, I suppose, in the way kids do. But no, like not from the point of view of I'd never heard any of the adults who lived around the area say anything bad about the Greek families or the Yugoslavian families or anything like that. There just didn't seem to be any racial tension. And my father's Aboriginal, so.
Did he ever get a bad time?
No.
And not you?
No. I got more of a bad time when I started going to high school, Newtown.
Why?
I was the only Aboriginal student in the school.
But you don't look at...
I know, that's the thing.
So how did they pick it up?
They picked it up because one of the teachers happened to mention that I was getting ab study instead of Aus study. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, mate.
Yeah, and so I was subject to a variety of just horrible name calling, boom and spear chucker and petrol sniffer and horrible things like that, just constantly.
There must have been such an assault on you, particularly this.
Yeah. White hair, blue eyes. Yeah, it doesn't really fit the Aboriginal mould, does it? No, it was very hard to have to deal with, particularly for the fact that for the first 4 years of high school I was the only Aboriginal student there, and it was very difficult to be able to relate to anybody else or relate what was happening to anybody else. They didn't understand, you're white, what difference does it make? You don't look black. And it's like, but the taunts are still hurtful. They didn't understand that, and it wasn't until other Aboriginal students started coming to the school that they clicked up on that. And but no, growing up in Chippendale, there was just none of that.
And in your family, were you raised with and taught about Aboriginal culture, and was that part of your life, or had your? So I know that some people have they haven't told their kids about Aboriginal culture or heritage because on the view that they're protecting them from this.
Well, no, I mean it was always it was always known that we had an Aboriginal background and we had an Aboriginal culture and heritage there. We would often go back to Yass and down to Bega where my dad grew up as well. He grew up on the mission in Yass, Hollywood Mission, which is no longer there now. I think somebody's bought it and built a big ranch house. But he took us back. We used to go there for holidays quite a lot. And I remember one year we went up to where the missions used to be. And there were you could still see some of where the houses used to be, and there was an old well thing that was there. And it was way out of town. Right up over the hills out of Yass. But yeah, no, it was never a case of, let's hide that from the kids. We knew where we came from and what our heritage was. And the school I went to, the primary school I went to, which was Darlington Public, which is on Abercrombie Street in Chippendale, they had a large number of Aboriginal students there, and Aboriginal teachers and teachers' aides and things. So we learned a lot about culture and heritage at school as well. So that was good. So there was never any sort of trying to hide it or anything like that. I mean, some people do that. Some people used to say that, no, we don't have Aboriginal in our family, it was a Spanish princess. And it's like, I don't think so.
Because it'd be a terrible shock. But you weren't expecting it anyway. You were expecting to be accepted just as you were at Darlington.
Well, that's the thing, I'd gone through Darlington and it was just an accepted thing. No one ever made you feel any different or anything. It's just you were another person. And, even, the non-Aboriginal students at the school, there was, I think there was an equal mix of, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal students, and it was never a problem with them. It was never a problem for them. They were accepting, and children can be the most difficult people sometimes, and they were all accepting of who you were and what you were. But when I got to high school, it was a completely different story.
And what made that? What happened? What made it? Why did that happen there?
I don't know. With Newtown, it was the majority of students there at the time that I started were Greek, and sort of Yugoslavian students, which I don't know. They all sort of because they were the majority sort of race there, I suppose. They banded together a lot. But again, it wasn't necessarily them that would come out with the taunts. It was the other, white Australian students who were there. That I suppose, because the Greek students had, with their families and things, had to put up with racial attitudes and taunts and things themselves, that they didn't necessarily do that to other people.
And they would have been, were they teased as well?
No, because they were the majority.
Do you think it was part of the gang mentality of adolescence a bit?
With some of them, yeah. With some of them, because it tended, the guys that did it would, they tend to be the ones who.
Stop. What am I going to say now? Wait a minute. Oh yeah. So how did you handle it? So what were sort of kids were hassling you if it wasn't?
Well, they were the type of kids who wanted to be more in with the rest of them. They weren't necessarily right on the outer, but they weren't sort of in with the not that they were the in crowd or anything like that. It's just that I don't want them to say anything to me, so I'll put shit on that person instead. Yeah. Tended to be more people like that with the taunts and the slurs and things. It got better as I got into sort of senior high school. One of the ways I dealt with it is that I went and actually spoke to the head of the English department and told her what was happening and what was going on, and she came into the class and threatened to expel them all if it happened again. And never did.
Gosh. And did you? How did you react on the playground to it when it happened? Did you?
A lot of the time, I'd just turn my back and walk away because I figure, I'm not going to get into this. This is just, absolutely ridiculous. There's no point in it. And sometimes I would get really angry and just, retaliate and yell back at them and things, and you can only take so much. But a lot of the time, yeah, it was just, right, fine, and walk away. Some of them, it was just wasn't worth your time wasting your breath with them. No matter what you said, it wasn't going to make any difference. They were still going to hold that opinion, still going to call you those names. So, yeah. And
was your father involved at all in Koori politics?
No, he wasn't. I don't know why he never has been. I suppose I do know why he hasn't been. I worked with the Aboriginal Land Council in Redfern for a while, and even though I am, of Aboriginal background, my skin wasn't black enough for them. So, I've copped it from both sides of the fence, and I think that's part of the reason why he won't go into it, and also because, particularly with places like the Land Council and the Aboriginal Children's Service and all those sort of places, they're run by the one family. It's like the Aboriginal mafia almost. And unless you're a direct relation to them, they make it incredibly difficult for you when you work there. And like myself, if your skin isn't black enough, then they make sort of comments about that. And, you white people, you all look the same to me anyway, so what difference does it make? It's like, well, hey, I'm not necessarily just a white person, and I do have that history and that culture behind me as well, and I do understand it, and I do appreciate it, and that is a part of my life and a part of who I am. So I think that's why Dad didn't really get into it much, because of because he's fairly dark, Dad, but like some people often will ask, is he Greek or Italian? because he doesn't necessarily look Aboriginal. And I think he never wanted to set himself up in that situation where they could say to him, you know, black enough for us. I'm not really sure, but I think he may have been in a situation like that when he was younger. I don't really know. But no.
Did he just decide to get on with his life outside of that?
Yeah, but not necessarily. Yeah, so he held on to the fact of who he was and where he came from, but I don't think he was into banging his head against a brick wall trying to get things done. You know. I think he figures he's too old now to do it.
Well, the question is, you know, were you expected to contribute toward the family? But I guess...
In a monetary sense?
Well, it's probably a question for the wrong generation, like in the Depression, but obviously you contributed when with your parents were working, looking after...
Yeah, sort of looking after, you know, looking after my younger brother and, you know, my cousin and things, and helping out, sort of getting dinner ready and making sure that, you know, everything was cleared up and the house was clean, and no, not that it was, you know, getting down on hands and knees and scrubbing the floor or anything like that, just making sure that there wasn't messes and things, and, you know, toys and newspapers all over the floor when Mum got home and things like that. Mum's very house proud, so...
you expected to tidy up and...
Yeah, just make sure that it's tidy and, you know, things are put back where they go, and, you know, if someone's made a mess in the kitchen, to make sure that it's cleaned up and things like that. Make sure that, you know, my younger brother was in bed on time and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
And so what did the family do for fun?
We used to go away, not so much holidays, like weekends. We'd... one of Dad's brothers lives down in Nowra, and he's a net fisherman, takes the boat out with the nets, and so we'd go down there and sort of leave at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock early Saturday morning, and sort of get down there at about 7 and drive out to the beaches, and they'd have tents and things set up, and we'd stay out at the beach for the weekend and go out fishing and pulling in the nets and getting, you know, the crab baskets in, and just sort of living off the beach for the weekend, which was just, it was great. Down there the sand's white and the water's crystal clear, and it's just beautiful. We used to go and do that a lot. We also used to travel back to Yass and, you know, spend a weekend in Yass, and because Mum and Dad both still have family and a lot of old friends living there, and again down to Bega. Because at the time my dad's mother was living down there, and he'd spent some time growing up around that area, and so we'd go and do things like that, and car trips and things, so that was good.
And what about in Sydney? Did you do anything as a family in Sydney?
Not so much, because I said Mum had sort of, you know, we'd come home and Mum wouldn't be there, she'd be out working, and it'd just be Dad at home. So it was difficult to sort of do things during the week, because the way the times they kept with working.
How did that early 1980s depression, there was a bit of a recession in the early 80s, and there was a lot of unemployment. How did that affect your family?
No, I don't think it really affected them very badly. Dad, I mean, as I said, Dad's been with this same job for the last 25 years or something. I think it's about the time Mum stopped working as a barmaid, and she got a job with Alsco Linen. They're a large linen service company that take, you know, all the hospital sheets and tablecloths from restaurants and things like that. So she got a job working there, and then straight into the hospital. So they've been fairly lucky with employment. They didn't seem to hit them very badly, which was good.
And when they came up, you were born in Sydney. I was going to say, what brought them from Yass to, Chippendale? But
don't really know. I think Mum moved up from Yass when she was about 14, I think she said, because her older sister was living in Sydney with her husband. So I think she came to live with them for a while. And the thing was, I think Mum and Dad actually met in Queensland. I think they knew one another in Yass, or they knew of one another, but there was nothing happening at that time, and I think they met in Queensland and got married and had me. And
Lived happily ever after.
yeah, well, sort of.
Well, in the evenings, after you come home from, say, the pool or what have you, well, what would you do in the evening?
Well, I mean, they'd be sort of helping Dad with dinner, tidying up after that, and making sure that, my younger brother was cleaned and dressed for bed.
Well, how did you get on with your younger brother? What you're talking about is getting him clean and dressed for
Yeah,
bed.
we didn't get on very well. We've only just started to get on sort of recently, which is quite a while. He was a horror of a child.
Right.
Yes, he was the baby, so he was allowed to get away with a lot. Yeah.
In the summer you'd go to the pool, Victoria Park. What about winter afternoons?
Winter afternoons, we tend to go down to Pine Street, the recreation centre, and spend a lot of time down there. Directly across the road from us was a factory, so we'd go out and play tennis against the wall of the factory, dodge the cars, and just sort of hang out the front, because there were a lot of kids around, so there was always something to do out the front. There was always someone to talk to or someone to play with, watch the older sort of guys that lived around the street. Sort of, I was sort of 8 or 9 at the time, and sort of the older teenage boys that lived around the street would skateboard down the hill and sort of around the corner into our street. Sometimes they'd come down doing handstands on the skateboard, and it was just great. We'd sit there and go, wow, and that'd be good. And yeah.
It sounds like it was very vibrant.
Yeah, it was. There was always something happening, because there was always a lot of kids around. A lot of kids lived in the street. Yeah, there was always something happening.
Did you ever run away from home?
No, I didn't. They thought I did once, but I didn't. Mum and Dad had been away for holiday, and my younger brother had gone with them, because I don't think he'd started school yet. I think he was only in kindergarten or something, so they took him with them. They were gone for like a week, and I was staying with my older sister at her house in Newtown. And I didn't know they'd come home this afternoon, so I went to her house after school, and no one was there, so I dumped my bag in the backyard and went off to play with some friends. And got back at about, 5:30 or something, and everybody was just like, oh my God, where have you been? Your mum and dad are back and they're frantic, and oh. And so that was sort of trauma for that afternoon.
What's a typical meal?
Typical meal, meat and 3 vegetables. And one of those vegetables was always lumpy dry mashed potatoes. Dad's specialty.
and chops?
Chops, yes, chops and sausages.
Overcooked?
Undercooked. Dad sort of doesn't know how to cook all the way through a piece of meat. Because of that, I for years could not eat potatoes. And if people were going to cook meat for me, it had to be cooked all the way through. I can't put a piece of meat in my mouth that has a bit of pink in it.
Well.
And I've gone for expanding my palate, my taste palate. Dad generally cooked, so it was meat and 3 vegetables, and 18 years of that, and very bland.
But if you went to did you ever go to the Greek kid's house?
No, I never actually spent a lot of time at there was one friend I went to his place. He was Yugoslavian. I'd been to his house a number of times, yeah.
And how did you feel about eating food from different cultures? Like, did you ever eat there?
Well, yeah, a couple of times. I thought it was great. It was something different, a new taste experience. Because of Dad's lack of culinary experience, I tended to want to taste anything new and different, and it was quite good. Some of the food was really nice. And one time they just fried up some salami, and we had it with bread, and it was just wonderful. Just really, really nice. It was a Polish salami. The only salami I can eat. Hate every other type of salami. But it was wonderful, and just like an amazing taste sensation after, you know, so many years of, you know, chops and vegetables.
Did you get takeaways that much?
No.
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 So you never had Chinese food or?
If I was at my sister's house, like occasionally I would go and babysit for my sister, her 2 young daughters, and before they went out, they'd go and buy Chinese takeaway for us to eat, rather than sort of having me cook dinner for the kids. They'd do things like that, or they'd buy pizza. So then we had takeaway, but like Mum and Dad weren't very much into takeaway. We'd occasionally have Kentucky. Yeah, that was Mum and Dad's big specialty on takeaway.
You know, the neighbourhood, like just thinking generally about the neighbourhood, was it sort of mixed residential industrial, or what was it?
Yeah.
And
Residential industrial.
And heavily influenced by the university.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you ever get up to the quadrangle, the main quad?
No, we weren't allowed up there. Like Mum and Dad said, we weren't allowed up there. That was too far away. We could stay in the university on sort of the Chippendale side of City Road, Seymour Centre, around that area, up to, you know, where the squash court, swimming pool things are, and the Wentworth building. But we weren't really allowed to go across there, just because it was too far away.
Wasn't Victoria Park sort of a dangerous place? It's pretty open.
Yes, and it still is a pretty dangerous place. People often get mugged going through there. So we would have to be home before it, you know, started to get dark. If we were up there and at the pool or something, it was, you know, always be home before it got dark. Something they used to do at Victoria Park, though, I remember one time they had a concert on the roof of the swimming pool. I forget who it was. It may have been the Skyhooks, someone like that. But it was just, the park was just completely and utterly packed out. There was, like, you couldn't see the grass for the people, and they had huge speakers and huge sort of scaffolding construction set up on top of it, and you could hear it for just miles. It was great. It was really, really good.
And did you go?
We were allowed to go for a little while because my older sister was with us, but as it sort of got a bit later on, sort of about 8 o'clock, we were sent home because that was, you know, too late for us to be out. Yeah, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Was it a safe neighbourhood?
Yeah, particularly where we were in sort of Calder Road, Ivy Street, because everybody knew one another. You know, you could walk around sort of, you know, after dark, because, excuse me, you know, people would have their doors open and things, because, you know, back in the 70s, excuse me, it was fine to have your door open, sit in your lounge room and not worry about sort of someone running in and, you know, harassing you and stealing things from you, which you can't really do now.
Really? You can't do that now?
No, you go down, I've been back down that way recently, and, you know, places have all got security bars and security doors on them now, and it just doesn't have the same community feel. The old shop's gone. The butcher's is now it's either a house now or some sort of office.
It must have changed after you left there to move to Erskineville.
Yeah.
Well, what was the social focus of the area?
Social focus?
Well, was there a place where lots of people met, like a pub or shop, or you know? I'm just looking if there was one.
Right. Well, there was the run of shops up on Abercrombie Street, just up from us. And I suppose, you know, that'd be the sort of local sort of shopping centre for a fair distance around. I think you had to. Mum and Dad used to go over to a place in Botany Road, way down Botany Road, to do sort of large grocery shopping. I think that was the closest place to do any sort of large grocery shopping at the time. And so people would go up to Abercrombie Street, and you know, there was the takeaway and the deli and the newsagent and the fruit and veg, and there's a hardware store which I was told only closed down about a month ago. He'd been there for, I don't know, 50 years. Yeah, and laundromat and all the laundromat that's still there.
But there was no place in the area where, you know, a lot of the locals would, like, a particular pub.
The Britannia Hotel.
Oh, right. So your mother would have known all that was going on in the neighbourhood?
Yeah, fairly, yeah. She, you know, she was fairly well known around the area because of working there, and my grandmother, my mother's mother, used to live just down in Chippendale, not far from us, and so, you know, she knew a lot of the people from the pub and things. Mum and Dad were, you know, quite friendly with the people who owned the pub.
You would have had a hard time being a rat bag or anything because everyone would have dogged on you.
Yeah.
You didn't knowing that.
Yeah. Yeah, you couldn't really do much without everybody sort of knowing what you were doing. So you behaved yourself.
So much for anonymity.
Yeah.
Well, where did most people work? Was there a local employer that attracted a lot of people?
No, not really. Oh no, tell a lie. Whiteley's Chemicals.
Never heard of them.
They're still there in Chippendale. They're down the other end of Ivy Street in Chippendale. They excuse me. They make a lot of cleaning products, disinfectants and things like that. So there was always this smell of disinfectant in the air. They employed quite a few of the locals, and it wasn't until one of the locals got very, very, very sick. One of the men who worked there, who was a friend of the family's, very sick, and he ended up getting huge compensation payments out of them. That they decided that, oh, we'll make our workers wear masks and gloves and boots. Yeah, they were sort of just down the road, and it's always this smell of disinfectant. Just a horrible, horrible smell, just too strong. Yeah, yuck.
Yeah. Were people involved in industrial action, or, you know, was your father, you know, part of a union or active in a union?
No, my uncle was part of the electrical trades union, very big in that. I think he was secretary for a while, and I think president at least for a year or so. And so I you know, heard about and learned a bit about that from him.
What about your mum in the liquor trades union?
No, she was just a barmaid.
Well, she would have had to be a member of the union.
Maybe, but she never mentioned it.
But she wasn't active?
No. They were sort of fairly staid, my parents.
I was going to say what the main businesses in the area would be there.
There was the Whiteley's Chemicals, and this factory across the road. For the life of me, I could not tell you what it did and what they did. You'd never see it open. I don't know whether it was just used for storage or what, but we used to play tennis against their wall. And around the front of the building, they had these two sort of large red doors that had just graffiti going back years. You know, so and so loves so and so, and you know, so and so was here, and you know, just people writing little snippets about other people, and you know, certain initials love certain initials in a love heart, and it's just all over this wall, and it was great. And like everybody who'd lived in the area, and like a lot of the kids at one point or other in their time of living there had written something on these doors, which have now been pulled down, and they're building those horrible townhouse things there. Yeah.
Sounds. Are there any sounds that come back to you when you think about the area?
The trains from Redfern. You hear the trains quite well.
Don't associate that area with trains.
Yeah. Do you know where the Australia Council building is in Redfern? Lawson Street?
Maybe.
It's sort of on the corner of Lawson and Abercrombie, and just behind that is the back of sort of Redfern Station. And so like on a quiet night, basically that's all you could hear with the trains coming and going. It wasn't a heavily trafficked area. I mean, Abercrombie Street was, but down where we lived in Calder Road, it wasn't that much.
What about sites? If you were to think back and you think, you know, Chippendale then, what's the image that comes into your head? That's
Sorry.
okay. Can you remember any local characters, identities?
There was Norm the milkman. He was a funny old man. He'd sort of rattle up and down the street in his truck and be abusive to all the kids.
Get out of the way.
Yeah, and so yeah, and more. He was a terribly funny old man. Like most of the parents said, you know, you behave yourself or I'm going to give you to Norm the milkman. He'll take you away. And so it was great, you know. And, you know, Dad had come in and said, "You're not my son. You're Norm the milkman's son. I don't know you. Go on." Things like that. So yeah, Norm was definitely sort of a local larrikin, local character. Yeah.
Were there people that you had to avoid?
To avoid. No, not really. The places we had to avoid, like we weren't allowed to sort of go up to Redfern Station and places like that because of the multitude of uni students and things coming down. Anybody could just, you know, grab you. Or it was Mum's, you know.
Students would be unlikely to grab you.
No, I don't think she was thinking along the students. I think because she was thinking there were so many people there that, you know, somebody could have been waiting just to grab a kid off the street. She was very paranoid about that sort of thing. She was very paranoid about us riding bikes. We weren't allowed to ride bikes because where we lived, we were allowed to have skateboards.
You didn't have a bike?
No, for the life of me, can't ride one. Can't ride a skateboard either.
Did you see any major changes? Well, how many years were you there? Were you there from 74, 2 or 3 or what?
I was born in '70s, and we were living there sort of as soon as I came out of hospital, living in Chippendale. But my earliest memories are from about 74. To when did we move out? About 82.
Oh right.
Yeah.
And were the changes happening in the neighbourhood then?
Slowly, very slowly. Not a lot.
Weren't people thinking that Chippendale was going to become another Paddington? You know, in terms of that real estate boom that happened at Paddington.
Yeah. People began to think that, and a few people actually moved in and bought some of the old terraces, and started to do them up. But it was going slowly, that sort of thing. You'd see every 1 or 2 houses in a street would be bought, and people would start to do them up.
Were people worried about that trend, that then rents would go up and all that?
Yeah, a lot of people were. Yeah. But it didn't seem to happen. People seemed to sort of go, "Oh, we're in Chippendale and there's Newtown, let's go to Newtown instead." And so that sort of Paddington set have now moved into Newtown and are doing let's buy the old terraces and do them up and hike the rents up so ridiculously high that people have to move to places like Tempe and Marrickville and things like that. And
were the residents, the long-term residents, hostile to the new people coming in?
Some of them were. Some of them were because they tend to be younger people who were buying the houses and who had no idea of what the history of the area was like, and the families that lived in the area, and so they'd have loud parties till all hours and things like that. So that got up people's noses. Excuse me. But not sort of horribly, just at times. Yeah.
These are questions about. Talking about you, I think we've covered most of this in one way or the other. This is all I was asking, who are your friends and what did you do together? But we've talked about that. Did you have any big adventures? Any particular time when you you can remember anything?
The day they thought I ran away.
Yeah.
It's in Newtown. We went into this old factory they have now turned into a large apartment building. They've just remodelled the inside of it, and that was a huge adventure. We sort of spent a couple of hours in there, sort of travelling up and down floors and things, and finding offices with things still in them, and it was great. It was just like being in another world. It was a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. Did you do that? Because people did move out of buildings and just leave things as they were. And as a kid, did you like scrounging for things?
Yeah. No, we'd go and do that. We'd have people would put things out to be collected, like for rubbish and recycling and things like that. So chairs and tables and just bric-a-brac and things like that. So yeah, we'd sort of go around and check things out and find what was there and take things home, only to have them thrown out again by Mum and Dad. But it was fun, sort of fun thing to do. I think the answering machine will get it. It's all right.
Okay. We'll just wait till it clicks in.
Should click in now.
At school, we've talked about that. How did the teachers treat you and all that? Well, what's your happiest memory?
I think the most fun we had was at the pool. It was something we did every afternoon during summer. Like from the first day the pool opened in the year, we'd be there every afternoon and all weekend long. So that, I think they're my happiest memories, being at the swimming pool, and because everybody would be there, like everybody from the neighbourhood would be there, and people from school would be there, and so that was I think, a lot of fun.
What about your saddest memory?
Saddest memory was finishing up at primary school and having to go to a completely different high school to everybody else that I went to primary school with. They all went to Cleveland Street, and my mother wanted me to go to Newtown because a couple of my cousins had gone there and done things there, and it was just horribly sad for me to have to go away from these people that I'd been with since kindergarten, since I was like 5 through the age of 12, having to move away from all of them as well. After I finished primary school, we moved over to Erskineville, so moving out of the area and not being able to continue to see these people on a day-to-day basis was very difficult. I think I was the only student from my school who went to Newtown High. So that also made it harder when I was there at Newtown, with the taunts and the things from the other students.
And why did your parents leave? Wait a minute. We're just about to run out of time. Thanks very much for your time. I'm sorry it's been cut short. Thanks a lot. It was good.